Alright, today we're going to be talking about how to create steam on Procreate. So an example of when you would use this would be, let's say like when you're drawing coffee mug, thinking about all the cuteness you can include in it, and you're adding a little coffee. Steam, or let's say like drawing a bowl of ramen. Right? Here are your noodles. Got your little Naruto thing over here. Can't forget your egg. Here, your noodles. You got your little seaweed. Then you want to show that it's a nice piping hot bowl of ramen. Right? That's when you would make steam. You can even see it, like let's say you want to make a jar. No, it's actually not a regular jar, it's a poisonous jar. And you have that little steam in there, right? You'd also use this effect here. It's kind of like a steam effect, or like aka a gradient transparency. Okay, so here are some examples of when you would use it. Now before we start, I think it's important to talk about some definitions. This is how I actually take notes, so I apologize if this is like too much for you guys. Okay, so some definitions are a clipping mask is, let's say I draw this ditto shaped figure. Actually, if we're gonna make a ditto, we might as well make it purple. Say I draw this ditto shaped figure, right? And I want to add some shadows right here, and I want to add some highlights. I'll plus here, add a second layer, then I'll click on it, and then I'll create a clipping mask. What that does is it basically says that anything that I put on this layer will only show if layer 1 has pixels there. Let's say I take the purple, this purple right here, and I'm going to add some shadows, so I'm going to go a little bit darker. I'm going to take a pen that I like. Let's say I use the 6B pencil at a pretty large size and like a low-ish opacity. Let me take this off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some shadows here and then some highlights here, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of shadow right here. Do you notice how out here where there is white, it's not actually showing, like it's not showing that dark purple? That's because it's all masked within this little ditto shaped blob. And then I'm going to go to the white and I'm going to add some highlights over here. So that's how you do the shadows here, highlights here. So if I were to take this layer and go to this arrow and move it around, you'll notice that those are the lines that I created that just didn't show. I just place it perfectly here. That's what a mask is. Which leads us to our next definition, which is quite similar. Well, kind of similar, but not really. They're kind of like sister brushes or sister settings, but also like not really sister settings. All right, let's just move on. We're gonna talk about alpha lock. So what in the world is alpha lock? Alpha lock is basically saying, all right, let's go to our first layer, which is the layer that we're on, and let's say I want to, I'm gonna use black, because why not? And I'm going to create a circle, hold it to make a perfect circle or an oval, drag and drop this color in. All right, cool. So what alpha lock does is to access alpha lock, you click on it and you press alpha lock. You'll know you're in alpha lock because the outside is gridded. I don't know, you can't really see. But another way to access alpha lock is to use 2 fingers and that looks so dirty, and then to alpha lock it like that. I'm going to come in with my white, and I'm going to, let's see, boom. Actually, that's not a good example. Come in with orange, and I'm going to alpha lock that in. Right? So it just locks the colors in. So it basically just takes the pixels that you have and it changes only those pixels. So you notice if I draw out here, it doesn't actually change anything. But if I go here, it'll change it. Okay? So what's the difference between alpha lock and clipping mask? Like, I can technically, you know, go back to my pencil, and I can technically, you know, shade down here and add highlights over here. The difference is actually quite large. The difference is clipping mask is a lot more forgiving. Let's say I wanted to actually delete what I shaded and highlighted, I could theoretically do that, right? And I could, let's say this shape actually should have another little bumpy thing over here. So I'm going to come in with the purple, and then I'm going to like add a little another little finger right here. Okay, yeah, cool. You can add to it. Can't you do the same thing with alpha? If you notice, if I add to it, it'll also add the shadows that I created. It'll also add the highlights. So that's kind of nice when you want to like extend something just a little bit further. Whereas like this alpha locked item, I can add to it, sure, but look what happens. It goes over all the shading that I created. I can't extend it anymore without having to go back in and then shade it again. Oh, see, alpha lock it and then shade it again. Like, okay, I need to add to it. So it's basically like working with just one layer, one piece of paper, piling everything on each other and not being able to undo. Whereas clipping mask, you're able to, you know, manipulate things a little bit more, use things, organize things on different layers, and then manipulate just those single layers. Okay. Yeah, okay, I can give you an example of when I use alpha lock and when I use clipping mask, but maybe that's just like for another video, another time, because it gets a little bit like a little bit more complicated. So yeah, the next definition is opacity. So what is opacity? It comes from the word opaque, right? So when something is opaque, that means you're unable to see through it. I can either go over the definition or I can show you. So I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to make it 100% opaque right here. This changes the opacity. I'm going to make it 100% opaque, and then I will draw. That's 100. Now I'm going to make it 78% opaque. Okay. 55. 32. 12. 1. Basically just think of like a glass window and blackout curtains. How much can you see through it? So the opacity ranges from 100 to 1% or 0%. And the last definition we want to talk about is streamline. So an example of streamline would be, let's say I take a pencil. Let's say I take the narrator pencil, okay? And I'm going to draw a circle. There's a circle. Okay, that narrator pencil is at none percent streamline. Now I'm going to take that narrator pencil and I'm going to change it to 28% streamline. Okay. Now I'm going to take that pencil and I'm going to make it 66% streamline. Can you see the application is a lot smoother? Now I'm going to make it 100% streamline, the maxed. basically it's like the flow of things. Haven't you ever heard like, we need to streamline these processes? It's making the flow a lot easier. So that's what streamline means. Streamline. Yes, streamline. All right, so those are the definitions that we're gonna kind of cover or go through today. So it's clipping mask, alpha lock, the opacity, and streamline. Okay, now let's practice these steam little buddies that we've been talking about. I'm gonna copy and take these babies down. I'm gonna take these babies down here. Okay. I'm gonna erase this. For the most part. Okay. So, how do we make steam? How do we make it look like a piping hot cup of coffee? What we do is let's start on a new layer. So this is not touching any of the other layers. This is a completely new layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find a brush. I'm going to use monoline. And this is monoline with the streamline all the way up. I'm going to take the monoline brush. I'm going to use a different color than black because I want to be able to see it. You can change the color anytime, honestly. Okay, so let's say I take like what's a good color to use? Blue. Okay. And take it, and I'm just going to trace it like that. Right? And then I'm going to drag the color dropper in and turn that into something blue. So there you go. That's how you make steam. Just kidding. There's more. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you guys different ways to make steam, but I'm gonna show you the simplest way. And I mean, they kind of look the same, so it depends on how you like to do it. So I'm gonna go to my brushes and I'm gonna go to charcoals, because this is a pretty fun one to use. Actually, what was it that I really liked? Was it inking? It was sketching. I like the soft pastel one. That one was pretty fun to use. So soft pastel. And then what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take this, I'm going to use my eraser brush, and this is the soft pastel. I'm going to have my brush size maybe like this large, because it's not that large of an image. And then I'm going to take my opacity and I'm going to bring it all the way down to like, say like 10% first. And I'm just going to do like a nice general sweep so I get that texture in there. So you see that? I'm just going to sweep it up. Oh, cool. Kind of see through it, because like you might be adding a lot of stuff here. Like for example, with this ramen bowl, like you work so hard on drawing the ramen and the egg and the seaweed and stuff, you don't want to block it. So yeah, it's nice to have it like a little bit more transparent here and then keep it a little bit darker here. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna do a nice little sweep with my eraser. Nice little sweep. And then to make it harder, I'm going to turn up the opacity. This is 31% now, and I'm just gonna keep going up. My idea, let me just take another pen and show you guys what my idea is. My idea is to keep this portion like a little bit like dark, this portion to be medium, this one to be very light, and this one to be basically erased. And I'm going to hide that layer, and then I'm going to go back to this layer, and I'm going to take my eraser tool, and then I'm going to turn up the opacity, and I'm just going to let's see what it looks like without the cups. Okay, clean up all of that down here. So I'm going to turn my opacity. You can even turn it all the way up just to make sure you get that down here, and keep lowering it as I go. All right, cool. So now I get like, it's like dark up here, and then it gets lighter, and there's a gradient, right? The opacity is changing for this once solid block. Now I'm gonna bring back the cup, and there you go. Actually, you know what, to see it better, let's erase what we created. Let's erase this right here. Okay, and then what I do to add to it is like I'll go on a layer above this steam, I'll choose white. And I'll use any brush. Right now I'm using the 6B pencil. And I'll come in and I'll go like that. You know? Just add a little bit of steam lines to it if I want. If I want to add that loop, I could. I don't really feel like adding that loop though. You can see? Like there's a loop. Right there. Loop there. Alright, so another way. A little bit more advanced way, or like basically being able to use clipping mask and stuff, which is why we talked about it. So I'm gonna go the normal route. I'm going to take a monoline brush. Let's say I'm gonna use, what color steam should we do this time? Let's do an orange one because I love the color orange. Okay, take it, fill it in, then I'm going to add a layer. Going to add a clipping mask. I'm gonna make a darker orange, and then I'm gonna take a brush that I really like. Let's just use 6B because there's another brush that I like, but I purchased it. I don't want to use purchased brushes in tutorials because it kind of just, it's a little bit disheartening sometimes because, you know, you're unable to like follow along if you're following along. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'll just like add a little bit of texture up here. Like that. I'm going to go back to my base layer and I'm going to find another texture that I like. Let's go to charcoal. Sure, why not vine? Okay, I'm going to go to vine charcoal under the charcoals brushes, and I'm going to look at the size of it. That's a good size, and I'm going to change the opacity all the way to like 8 right now. I'm going to take it and I'm just going to do a nice little sweep. Oh, a little bit more maybe. Can't really see what's going on. That's too much. 20%, and I'm gonna do it lightly. Nice sweep on everything. Like this. Alright, nice sweep. Make it gradual. Okay, you're like, oh, this looks exactly the same as the other one. You just use a different texture. Yes, completely, it is the same, right? I use the exact same method, only like now I have this like top layer. What's really cool about this top layer thing is that like I can go be a little bit like risque, and let's say like I want to change the color of just the top one. Let's say like, okay, I want to make it blue, but like a dark blue. So what I'll do is I'll go and I'll alpha lock it like this. So it's only going to affect the layers on the top, right? So I'll go in with my any brush. I'm using the hard airbrush because it's like really large, and it's only affecting the layer, it's only affecting the pixels. So it's basically just changing that. Boom. So then you can see there's like blue and orange. It creates like a cool effect, and you can even like go in and say, you know, I really just want my steam to be only blue, so I'm gonna alpha lock the base layer and I'm gonna choose like a darker blue. And then you can see like there's a difference. There's like darker blue on the bottom and then a lighter blue on top. Or like if I want to choose a black even, I can make it black. I can go in and make it super yellow with blue, like that. So this is another way of also, you know, creating steam. So come in here, let's delete this steam so we can see what's going on with our steam. And there you go. That's not really a great combination, but yeah, there you go. That's how I create steam. This is the way that I taught myself. Like I honestly didn't know how to do it, and then I kind of just like, once I knew the basics of like clipping masks, alpha lock, opacity, and then Streamline, just like so you get that nice flow. Once I kind of like put 2 and 2 together, I kind of just like made up this process on my own. So I really hope that this helps, so you guys can create some sort of like different ambiance for your drawings and stuff. Yeah, like I've learned that once you kind of get the basics, you can play around and you can create some really complex things. Or I guess this is not very complex, but yeah, I hope that this helps. I hope that you guys are practicing it, and let me know if you guys end up like if you guys do end up using it, because I'd love to see what you guys make with these really cool steamy little guys. All right. Thanks guys.